Hi, my name is Dorian, and this is You, Me, and the Industry. A podcast where I get to hang out with people from the games industry, and sometimes prior guests even decide to give the show another go and join me for another interview. This episode I am once again joined by Dave Mervik, the senior narrative director at Tarsier Studios, which a few months ago released their long-awaited sequel, Little Nightmares 2. We get to follow up on the previous episode, talk about how horror has changed over the years, what went into the making of Little Nightmares 2, Dave shares some never-before-released infos on his work, and I get to collaborate with him on a very special project at the end. You don't want to miss that. Please enjoy. Hello everyone and welcome to the show. Today I'm joined once again by the one and only Dave Mervik. You know him as the narrative designer of the indie darling Little Nightmares 1 and 2, as well as other games such as the VR title Statik. Dave, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm very proud to be asked back.
Yeah, right, because the list was so long. The queue was so long, everybody was rushing over here, trying to get in line, and you were just the lucky one out of the millions of guests.
I sense the sarcasm, but I listened to our last chat, and I still enjoy the conversation we had. So I think it should be more popular.
Oh, that's really nice of you. I also re-listened to this episode, and I realized that the audio mixing was terrible. So this time, I promise you, I will do a better job.
Yeah, I should think so too.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, but anything you noticed besides the horrible audio mixing from the last conversation? You were like, oh yeah, that was interesting, or something like, oh, I think I should have phrased it better.
No, I don't like to edit myself in that way. I think what comes out comes out. I think the worst thing is when I feel like I'm too scripted. If I'm just like repeating the same sound bites over and over again, so I try not to do that.
Right.
Hear myself saying the company line, and I try and ruin it.
Yeah, right. I think so. So this time, this episode will only filled with exclusives and highly confidential stuff. So I think it's a nice balance. Last time you were very corporate, and now you're just leaking everything.
Exactly. I think I'm going to go down swinging.
That's nice of you. Yeah, and I think it's a worthy sacrifice, like your entire career for just this 60-minute interview. I think it's valid.
I can't think of a better podcast to die in.
Thanks. Yeah, and maybe Joe Rogan, but I mean, who cares, really, right? Who's Joe Rogan?
Exactly.
And yes, so as it is courtesy here, we usually start off with the topic you brought to the show, but this time we're gonna mix it up, and we're gonna talk about the stuff we mentioned last time on the last episode. And since I'm such a incredible host, I'm listening deeply to the guests. I, of course, followed your advice and checked out some of the stuff you mentioned before on the last episode. So you mentioned the book Momo, and of course I read it like months ago, and not just at 8 in the morning today, rushing through the pages to just get it done in time, like back in school.
Notes.
Right. Yeah. So
What did you think of the book?
It was very interesting. I think what I found most interesting is that the ending was only like 20 or 30 pages of like a 260-page book. And also there's like, when you think about movies, and there's like our huge obsession with like the issue of like a Deus Ex Machina. And I'm not sure if this is true for books or just this story in particular. The writer just didn't care at all. He just like wrote this like turtle in, and it's just like, the turtle is going to save the day, and it's just, I don't care. The turtle will do it. The turtle will do it multiple times. I don't care. Like, nobody should care about this turtle, and I really appreciate it, because usually when I looked at a movie or something, my brain would go, of course, into the director mode and say like, well, why is this turtle now coming up? It's so random, right?
I hadn't even questioned the turtle. I just enjoyed that it was a turtle, like one of the slowest animals out there.
Right.
I guess that was what he was thinking, but it's been a while since I read that book.
Yeah,
I don't know how much.
Yeah, and I didn't really mind at all that it was a turtle and that it just came out of nowhere. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I think overall it's a great story. It's quite some of the things you mentioned before, like this sort of it is a kid's book, but there's also an inherent darkness to it, like an inherent like almost like depression. I got the same vibes from like reading 1984. So maybe not as much, but it felt really depressing, like the gray man and how they invaded the people's lives and everything. And you know what I also found interesting. One of the issues I have with reading books or stories is usually that I don't really. I'm missing the audio component of it, so I usually put on like a soundtrack to trying to match the mood. And
oh, really?
Totally, yeah.
That's cool.
I think this is like I think this is like sometimes very hard, sometimes also very easy. So this time I put on the Silent Hill soundtrack, and I'm gonna tell you, it worked incredibly well.
I've never known anyone that, apart from Alan Partridge, one of my most favourite comedy creations. He wrote an autobiography. And in the book version of that, there is a suggested playlist, and it says like in this chapter, time to press this track,
right?
And he wants this soundtrack playing while you read this section of his life, and it's the only other person I know who does that.
Sometimes very hard to manage because I sometimes feel like, oh, this is now a really good track, and I'm like, oh no, wait, I have to skip to the next track, and I'm always trying to find like soundtracks that are like. Sort of like the song can, or like the track can be interpreted in many ways. So for like it can be somber, but it can also be a little bit of like an adventure theme. So it's like I'm always trying to find like tracks that mix both. And I think Silent Hill 2 worked perfectly in this case. And you know, it brought this question to my head for about the like how people are able to experience work from other people. So for example, I'm pretty sure the author, Michael Ende, never thought about a person in Germany listening to a video game soundtrack coming from Japan of a PlayStation 2 game while reading his book. And I find it so interesting that, you know, with video games, everything is like one package. There's like, I mean, you could, of course, add music or change something, but it's usually the whole package. And I think it's quite interesting to see, like, there are people who are like maybe even like listening to this book in like an audiobook form while riding the bike, for example, or like, you know, sitting on the beach and they're talking about like this depressing stuff. And I find it interesting. What is your take on that?
I think that's really cool. I love it when people kind of engage with and change something up, you know, because there can be like there's like an inherent snobbery with art. Like, no, this is it. You have to stand and stare at this painting, for example, and think about it and stroke your chin.
Right.
Then there's other people who go, nah, fuck that. This is like art, and I'm going to experience it the way I feel it.
Totally.
You know, and there's people who like the few things that spring to mind. There's like someone who put on, you know, Dolly Parton's Jolene. They played it at 33 1/3 instead, and they uploaded that to YouTube, and it sounds like Ray LaMontagne. I think, who was it? Yeah, I think it was. It's like a really cool, it sounded like Ray LaMontagne, who, funnily enough, did a song called Jolene as well. You should hear that, though. It's a totally different version of Jolene, but so cool still. Change it up. And then there's that, I think it's like, I don't know if it's an old wives' tale, but like if you play, it's like a Pink Floyd album or something over Wizard of Oz, was it?
Oh, yeah, something like that. Yeah, I heard about it.
It's almost perfectly in sync.
Right, yeah, exactly.
This album works alongside. I think it was those two things.
Right, yeah.
But I mean, I love that. I think there's nothing better. I haven't done anything anywhere near as creative.
Right.
But I know when I finished watching Twin Peaks, the original series, a while back, I just wanted to do it again. But I'd been struck by how classic it felt, like the composition of the scenes and stuff.
Yeah, right.
And so I just turned all the colour down on the telly and started watching it again. And it's amazing how different that feels and how much better it feels. You experience it in a different way. I told someone about it because I was super proud of myself, and they said, that sounds really fucking pretentious, man. Like that. That just brought me right back down to earth. So I haven't told anyone else until I told you today.
I think there was a special on the Empire about movie-going experiences, and I think I find it also very interesting with movies, for example, when they tell the movie-going experience is so unique. So, for example, if somebody's yelling something stupid or like making a funny comment or everybody's clapping, this is all part of the movie experience. And this is something the creator of the movie could never predict or could never like plan for, or something like the crowd will go wild here or the crowd will go there. They of course try to do something like this, but every viewing is so unique. And I think David Lynch also said that like everybody is looking like experiencing his movies differently. Maybe they're watching it like on their phone, on the toilet or something, or in the cinema. And I think this is very interesting that there's some sort of randomness creators will never be able to control with movies, for example.
It's funny, David Lynch, because like he's so staunchly, against watching movies on your phone. He gets so angry when he thinks about that.
Yeah, right.
But then at the same time, when people ask him what's going on in his work, he won't tell. He doesn't want to tell you what he's doing, but he also wants to tell you what not to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I don't begrudge him that, because he's one of the best artists alive, I think, in that realm. But it reminded me though, with people kind of engaging in the cinema. Wasn't it Eddie Murphy who did a bit about that, where like, in the cinemas when he was growing up, like everyone in the audience would just be like talking to the screen, like the people, what's going to happen now, and all this, just like actually having a conversation with the characters on screen. I think it was Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm trying to think, like, would that have annoyed me though? Because I am like really, really fascistic about people making noises in the cinema.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, I guess if you go into a cinema knowing that's going to happen, maybe you're just up for it already. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm like, shut up! I can hear you breathing.
Yeah. Yeah, and moving on to we're already speaking about movies. I also checked out 3 of the movies you mentioned on the last episode, like The Exorcist III, Frank, and The Fountain.
I got Fountain wrong, didn't I? I remember that. I still feel ashamed of that.
Yeah, it was you said it was the Tree of Life. Some shit, right, yeah.
So go on, give me your opinions.
Well, The Exorcist was really, really interesting because I'm a huge fan of horror movies, and I think this movie was like one of the few that did jump scares right. There was like this corridor scene, and I'm terrified. I was.
What, in the hospital?
Yes.
I think it's the world's greatest jump scare.
Probably, yeah. Because it goes on for so long, and you totally almost forget that it's like still going on, and then there's like this first one coming, and you're like, oh, okay, okay, and then you're like, wait, why is this still going on? Like, why is this scene not stopping?
Yeah, stop going back to the desk.
Right. Yeah. And then you're just like, oh, okay, I'm done. And then the jump scare comes, and you're just like, oh my god, and the music is so loud. I'm just like, I'm cutting ahead. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Right. With the scissors, and I'm just like, oh my god.
I know. It's just.
Yeah. And besides that, I found it was really interesting to have like an unusual protagonist. Like, I'm not quite sure what his name was, but like the detective who was like screaming all the time.
Yeah, George C. Scott.
Right, yeah.
He's the only one who got taken over from Lee Cobb. For me, like, the original Kinderman.
Right.
I mean, it was a totally different take.
Yeah.
But like, because I read Legion again recently, which is that Exorcist III is from, and it was a very different character in that book, and I couldn't imagine Lee Cobb playing that character again. I think he did so well in the first film. Mm-hmm. With this, there was this kind of like weird quirkiness, and then sudden like bursts of rage from him, and nobody screams like George C. Scott. It's just
it was great. Yeah, totally.
Not in the file.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was not in the file.
And then that weird story he tells about the fish.
Yeah,
and he told that in both books as well. He's just obsessed with this.
Yeah, right.
This fish swimming up and down this bathtub.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, and what's your take on the director's cut versus the studio release? I only saw the studio release, and I found it was quite good, actually.
Yeah, and I was all ready to love the director's cut because I'd heard so many horror stories about the studio release, and I really felt for Blatt, even though a lot of the people on the team, like on the crew, were being very diplomatic, but they didn't really like working with him. They thought he didn't understand film and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt from, like the way you feel for David Fincher making Alien 3, like
Right,
just
yeah.
leave him alone and see where he's going. But then I bought like that Blu-ray with both cuts on it, and I watched the piece together director's cut. And
Right.
you know what? It's not good.
Yeah, right.
It's really not good. Like the Brad Dourif wasn't nailing it like he did in the studio
Right,
cuts,
yeah.
and so much. I mean, it did. It kind of fizzled out, and I actually think the book did as well. Just didn't. It was missing that kind of cinematic ending. I don't think the ending in the studio cut was good though.
Okay.
But it kind of reached some crescendo. I thought it was ridiculous. Suddenly, like, oh, here's an exorcism. Wheel in Nicole Williamson, and then just break out the floor, and then there's like terrible like theatrical lights shining up, and this nonsense. But everything up to that point, so I would just get rid of the ending and find a better one that neither the studio nor Blatty wrote.
Yeah. I find it funny because like usually it's like either the director or the studio is right. In this case, both are wrong, and you Dave Mervik is right. The Dave Mervik.
I got it. Yeah, give me the Merv cut.
Right.
but because for me the strongest thing about that film are the conversation, apart from the jump scare, which is just fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
Is the dialogue. So whether it's between is it Father Morning? I can't remember if that was his name. The guy who. His friend who, and Kinderman, and it's the stuff between Kinderman and the Gemini killer.
Right.
Those two series of conversations are so powerful and do so much to create the atmosphere and the tension that makes that film absolutely sing. And when you're showing stuff that Brad Dourif hadn't kind of nailed it yet, it felt weird. Yeah, it was strange to kind of be on the side of the studio cut there.
Right.
I very rarely am.
Yeah.
Except with Donnie Darko, actually. Donnie Darko, Richard Kelly was wrong as well.
Right.
Okay. Was it Richard Kelly? I think it was.
I have to maybe out myself that I really didn't like Donnie Darko at all.
Yeah, I think it became very quickly overrated, but I just watched it because someone I worked with at Warsaw lent me the video, back in the days of video.
Yeah, VHS.
Yeah. He lent at me, and it was just some little curio at the time. I was like, oh, cool. Oh, Patrick Swayze's a pedo. How weird.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. There's just so many lovely, weird things that they've done. Yeah.
And also talking about Frank, I'm not quite sure if I have that much things to say about it. It's just an overall very weird movie. I'm not quite sure how to put it. It's just a movie. I'm just like, what is going on here? What's this movie about?
Yeah, do you know? I mean, it was a little bit because I grew up with Frank Sidebottom.
Right.
Did we talk about that last time? Didn't we?
A little bit.
Yeah, it was Chris. I think his name was Chris Civvy. He from Timperley in Manchester, and he was just this weird guy who'd show up on daytime TV or like Northwest Tonight when I was coming back from school.
Right.
And Frank Sidebottom would be on it playing this bizarre, stylophone song, or on his keyboard with the 16-beat rhythm and all this, and you're like, what's going on? What is this?
Yeah, right.
This is insanity.
Yeah.
But and it was amazing because it was just punctured the mundanity of everything else you see, on top of the pops. If he made it onto the top of the pops again, what's going on now?
Right.
And it's like everyone else is shown for the frauds they are when Frank Sidebottom came along. And that's I kind of, even though you don't need to know of him, it had that same flavour, even though they transported it. It was, all right, it became Michael Fassbender instead.
Yeah.
So he's inherently more cool, and the band sounded more like, Captain Beefheart and Godspeed You Black Emperor. Something you would actually kind of enjoy. I mean, I've got the soundtrack and I love it. But it's still got that feeling of the whole recurrent motif of the masks. I love that everyone, people trying to be something they're not. Like the keyboard player. Find himself playing a song by Madness. All right, how about this song then? Oh no, that's your song. I've got nothing of my own.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to say. All right, I'll go on Twitter then. I'll create a personality that way. And constantly there was this lovely conflict between people who are pretending
Right.
to be cool and doing the cool thing, and people who are inherently cool doing what's inside them.
Yeah.
And if that is I have to wear a mask, then that's I have to wear a mask. But then, I don't know, I love that film so much. But it's a weird one.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I don't know, I just think it was such an odd one. I think the only thing I didn't appreciate though, or maybe it's even that's great about it. Like when they made it to his parents' house.
Yeah.
They were trying to find him. And he was like saying he's a musical genius, and he's not, he's mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
Because even that, there's like so much bullshit spoken, isn't there, about artists?
Yeah.
And like, they've got something inside them. Oh, and there's this romantic notion of being an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, these are tortured people a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like Sylvia Plath, how many times did she try and kill herself before she succeeded?
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's very tempting to just see her as this figure who was just dancing with death, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, she just wanted to die. She managed it. She was a terrible person to be around, with her and Ted Hughes both, really.
Mm-hmm.
And what came out of that hatred of life was some art, but it wasn't like this kind of, this facade she was wearing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think
it just did a lot. It felt very honest, that film.
Yeah.
Even though it felt kind of lightweight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a very good segue into the topic of the fountain, because I think Aronofsky also Taxi Driver, at least for me, and there's like this ending of like, well, these are now like heroes or like great artists, but they're just like potentially like maybe a little bit like not mentally ill the taxi driver is very likely mentally ill, but I mean there's like something wrong with them. They're just depressed, or there's something in them, but then the outside is perceiving them as like these great artists or heroes. So I guess like that would be a good segue into the fountain, which also had some symbolism of like Momo. I actually watched the movie like many months ago, but now just thinking about finishing the book many months ago, also not today. It was like there's also some of the like right at the ending about like this, like there's also this like tree and the flowers of time, and I was like, oh yeah, that's just like the fountain, I guess, which has also a great score and some unique visuals. I'm not quite sure about the ending, but it's something. And I then also realized that this meme is also from there, which I've never seen before.
Right, really?
Yeah, there's like a meme where he's just like looking at the tree, and he's like very old, and like the golden light is shining upon him, and I think this is usually used in gaming forums for like, I don't know, like I've seen the light. There's a new trailer or something.
I am such a Luddite when it comes to memes. Right. I just get mocked at work.
Yeah.
Like, what's that? What's that you're saying? Oh God, you don't know anything, man.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Oh. I
sometimes. I don't know. If I have a tendency to repeat myself a lot when I feel like I've said something well, and I don't try and re-say it. But I can't remember if I said this to you. But like, I remember when I watched The Fountain, and I went talked to a guy called Patrick, who's like our cinematic artist. He's like amazing. But we both felt that like we'd watched that movie and felt we knew something more, but didn't know what it was.
Yeah, totally. That's 100% it, right?
So I can't even pretend to tell you like I've studied it or like analyzing that, the themes that they explore. I'm like that. I don't know, and I don't want to watch it again.
Right.
I just felt something really profound.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know what that was. And I love Aronofsky for that sometimes, that you just feel something, whether it's kind of disgust or or abject terror.
Yeah.
When it comes to Requiem for a Dream, particularly.
That's true. Yeah.
I love The Fountain. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to know why, I guess. I think this is also many times for David Lynch. I'm just like, I love this, but this is also insane.
Yeah, and it bothers me. I love it when I read a good take on a film or a book or whatever. It also bothers me when people feel the need to just pull things apart and know everything and go, no, this is it. This is how it is.
Right.
All right, well, that's dead then.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, people have that need, don't they? Like, they need to name everything, need to describe everything,
Totally, yeah.
and then fight about it with someone else who feels the same. It's just like,
Yeah,
what are you doing?
yeah. Yeah. And yeah, moving on. So let's get back on track with the regular show. So yeah, did you bring a topic to the show this time?
No. Um, I think I can talk about the latest books I've been reading.
Hey, sure. Let's
Did
hit
you
it.
send me anything to ask for a topic
Yeah,
that I've missed?
I think it was in the last
Am I,
email I sent you. Wanted to
am I,
remind you about
I
something.
searched through our email chain, and I'm like, I swear he will have prepared. He's good like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, you can bring a topic of your choice to the show. Oh yeah.
That's no problem. I mean, we can.
No. I mean, I always have a topic,
Okay, that's perfect.
but it's basically either what I've been playing or what I've been reading or listening to. I have very little else that I care about.
Yeah. So maybe one of each. How about that? One of each.
All right, cool. Right, well, I'll start with the books then because I've just finished a saga that my wife imposed on me. She does that a lot.
Yeah.
She just buys me like a tower of books. And
Okay.
I'm like, oh, I need these. But this was by a Swedish author called Vilhelm Moberg.
Mm-hmm.
Wilhelm Moberg, to my anglicised chums. And it's like the Emigrants quadrilogy. It ended up being a series of 4 books about people who left Sweden. What was it, in the 18th century? I think it was. It was a Great Depression in Sweden for sure, and then they emigrated to North America.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the story of these group of people who decided to leave.
Yeah.
And the lengthy journey that made you feel that journey on the boat, what they went through, and then when they got there, and it sounds really dry. And I was reading the back of the first book. I was like, oh, really? I've got to read this because they're big books as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I read the first couple of chapters, and I was hooked. It is a page turner in the best sense. You know, it's not a Dan Brown. It's not like this airport crap that you get where, oh, it's a real page turner. Couldn't put it down. I threw it down. But with this one,
Yeah.
with these 4, you are so engrossed and it's so visceral at times.
Right.
They're brilliant books. I can't recommend them highly enough.
Perfect. Yeah.
I don't think they went into like, you know, the displacement of the native people
Right.
enough, but I think it would have lost focus if they had. I mean, but his standpoint was clear.
Okay.
You know, like
Yeah.
every so often it was very clear that
Right.
this land had been stolen, and there's a lovely recurrent visual motif that he describes about reminding you of whose land this was. You know,
Right.
it's a big ask for you to read them, but maybe we need to speak in 2 years' time if you're going to read them.
Yeah.
But they're really, really, really great books.
That's awesome.
I put it next to The Grapes of Wrath, which is one of my 2 favorite books of all time.
Wow. Big praises here.
I love The Grapes of Wrath. It's the closest I think I did cry actually at the end of that. I was like choked by the final scene of The Grapes of Wrath. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd read in a long time. Like after what they go through in that book, to just weave this scene at the end of the book, I was like, I couldn't take that. It was just absolutely.
Wow, that sounds terrific.
Yeah, so there you go. I've snuck another one in.
That's perfect. Yeah, and any soundtrack or music you would recommend for that? Because I have to I have to have some music.
I don't know. I think you need to take that journey yourself.
Okay.
I'll recommend something.
Sure.
But I'm gonna do something that ruins it for you. I don't know.
Potentially,
like,
that's true.
Willie Nelson. Garth Brooks. Listen to Garth Brooks.
Okay.
Really crappy country and western music. So you get into the spirit of what terrible things have happened to North America over the century.
Okay. And what about the game?
Literally just finished a game called It Takes Two.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was and it wasn't at the same time. I mean, it's kind of a darling like Josef Fares in Sweden. You know, like he's done some great movies. So it was everyone's always interested to like play his next one, like play Brothers, and
Yeah.
haven't played A Way Out yet, but It Takes Two, and like I loved so much of it. I hated the story
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
with Venom. I hated that story.
Right.
I hope Faraz doesn't hear this
Maybe. I'm not quite sure.
because he was one of the two writers, and it's not often I would actually kind of call that out. But it was awful. I mean, but in spite of that, I think when the gameplay was great, it really was. It was like
Yeah.
I love co-op playing. Me and my wife played it, so it's great fun playing couch co-op.
Right.
It's
Yeah, totally.
not that popular at the minute.
Yeah, yeah, right.
We used to love playing. You see the first two Little Big Planet games. We got
Mm-hmm.
so much time out of them, and then it just kind of died a death.
Yeah.
That kind of gameplay. So yeah, I loved it, but then I felt like there were times where it felt like they were filling content.
That's true, but I think it's also like I agree on some level, but I think that's also sort of a good problem to have because they were mixing it up so much with the gameplay. So I'm just like I can sort of understand they were like, well, we have to fill up the story somehow, but we have like too many good ideas, so we have to sort of bulk it up a little bit. But I agree overall the story was a little bit the weak side, of course.
Yeah, there were just a few areas. Boss fights, I have a real aversion to. So whenever there's a boss fight that I have to do more than a couple of times
Yeah.
to complete it, I get annoyed because I hate the boss fight pattern.
Right.
Because I instantly don't think of it as a game anymore. I'm like, this is just I can see the mechanics here,
Yeah, yeah,
and I
right.
can see that it's not been executed well enough. So I'm just getting annoyed
Mm-hmm.
because the animation isn't playing fast enough for me
Right.
to do the thing I know I have to do. But I think what the leavened it at least in this with they gave you checkpoints during the boss fight, which is a huge bugbear of mine when you get effed over by the I don't know, I can't remember if I'm supposed to swear on these things.
It's totally
Uh,
fine.
get fucked over by the game, and then you have to start right at the beginning.
Yeah, right.
Then these controllers are expensive, and I can't keep smashing them.
Yeah.
So, but I thought that was nice. I thought that was a
Mm-hmm.
nice kind of concession they made there. Where like, oh, hang on, that thing that I did that was hard, they kept that they kept that in memory, so that was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that thing I'd literally just finished.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think it was good. It was certainly the good stuff was good enough to warrant
Yeah.
recommendation for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And well, I think that's a good segue for since you're the narrative designer and in charge of like coming up with the world and everything for Little Nightmares. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, for example, like horror in general. For example, modern horror. And I'm quite sure that you've watched movies like Hereditary, for example, and that, in my opinion, sort of changed the way horror is displayed. There's like a real, like not a curve, but there are like real time blocks throughout time and history, whether like horror was this, horror was that, and horror is now this. And when it comes to games and when you think about the world and how to, yeah, maybe approach a topic like horror in Little Nightmares, for example, how much does this affect yourself with like, well, now back in the day, like I don't know, many years ago, we wrote Little Nightmares like this or came up with the world like this, but now horror sort of changed through like not even like there's nobody declaring like, well, this is horror now, please follow the rules. It's more like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of transitions naturally.
Mm. Well, it's one of those where you've kind of got to follow what you think,
Right.
because you've got your opinion on stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I think if your opinion changes with the wind, then you're chasing the wrong thing. You're chasing fame, or you're chasing popularity. You're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, we want this game to sell,
Right.
and now people are making like torture porn movies. They're back in.
Right.
So that's where we need to go. Even though we don't believe in it one bit,
Mm-hmm.
we need to go that way. So, and we're not really interested in that. So it may, when we do horror, if we do a horror game, maybe it won't be in fashion at the time, but we can only go with what we think works.
Right.
And that might evolve over time as well.
Mm-hmm.
It might be like, yeah, do you know what? In Little Nightmares, we kind of towards the end, we felt like this would have been cool as well, and so
Mm-hmm.
you just hold on to that, don't you?
Right.
But I mean, like mentioning Hereditary, I thought it was good, but I also thought that and like Midsummer, I thought were both actually quite straightforward horrors. That they had a very nice rapping and some great acting, particularly in Hereditary.
Right. Yeah.
I thought they were actually quite conventional horror movies. Just visually and audibly, I think both really excelled.
Right.
I think with Midsummer particularly, that opening 10-15 minutes. Have you seen that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
That really shocked me. That shook me, that one.
Yeah.
Up to the thing leading to them heading over to Sweden. But yeah, I mean, I'd heard a lot of good things about both those movies, and then I watched them, was like that. I don't know. It didn't get me. So I think we just you take what you appreciate from stuff, and maybe it's popular, or maybe it's not. And it helps evolve what you think would be good. So like whatever we come to do next, it might be a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
That I'd look back to Nick Cage and Bridget Fonda, and it could happen to you, because I think that was like so sugary sweet. It was delicious, that movie, and overly sincere in a way that you couldn't resist.
Yeah.
Although it also had Rosie Perez's voice for an hour and a half, which is like unbearable. So you have to kind of take the things that you like and maybe leave Rosie Perez's voice out of it, and you bring that to what you think kind of belongs in the next thing that you're doing. But I don't think we can chase what's popular. If that was your question, I just ramble for it.
Yeah. And you just mentioned Midsommar and Hereditary. And I think I really like both of those movies. And I think Hereditary was, my opinion, one of the best horror movies of the last years. But I always think it is very difficult to nail the ending of a horror movie. So without giving away the ending of Hereditary, in case somebody still wants to watch it, I'm always at the end, or very often, I'm saying just like, all right, so what? Like, what is it now? Like, what now? Like, I mean, they did the thing, and you're just like, but so what does it mean? Like, what am I, like, not really, like, really, what does the movie mean? It's more like, for this story, it's like, so where do we go from now here? I'm just like, okay. And since you watched Hereditary, you know what I'm implying to. I'm just like, okay, so what? So did you ever feel like this was like an issue while designing something in a video game for you, where just like, well, yeah, how do we end this? Like, so what? Like,
I hate endings. I hate, because they always feel so contrived.
Right.
I would, if it was up to me, I would just end. I think the best kind of ending I can stomach is when it's uncertain, when you're just left with something that feels like, even it can feel like a nasty taste in your mouth, or it can feel like you've won completely, but you don't think you have. It's one of those, But I think with both those that we just talked about, Midsommar and Hereditary, it was an ending. It was a definite ending.
Right.
And then I'm like, no, you did so much work there to get me to this place, and then you tied it up, and okay, that felt like a tying up thing that people do, and it cheapens it straight away. So I need to get better at that, obviously, because you do have to end things. But with like Little Nightmares, it was one of them. Like, all right, so how do we do this in a way that kind of people can still see that this is part of the character arc,
right?
And doesn't just feel like some tacked on ending, But luckily, like I say, I think maybe like we talked about last time, it's not just me that has to kind of make these decisions. So
right.
Well, it will be now, because I am now narrative director, so you have to bow next time we talk. I have a really important sounding job title, so I think I will have to actually stomach coming up with an ending.
I mean, lucky me, there's still the line is still so long. There's little chance that you might be back for a third time.
I'll be back, my friend.
So for example, when you talk about like the free the structure in narrative, like there are usually three distinct acts, like a beginning, middle, and end. Do you sometimes find it helpful to use these structures, or do you just think, this is already too limiting for me? Like, I don't want to think this way. I'm sort of like making it up as I go.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I read about that a while back.
Mm-hmm.
There's different kind of writers. I feel like I've said this to you before. I'm terrible. I can see in people's eyes when I'm repeating myself, and now I can't see your eyes. I don't know. I can't see them glazing over.
Right.
But no, I had always thought I was just a bad writer, which might still be true, but like, because I could never make a plan. I could never go. Right. So we start here. This is this, and then you have an inciting incident, and then you have and then there's the refusal of the call, and all this Joseph Campbell stuff that people just are obsessed with replicating. I'm like, I can't work that way. It feels like, because if I know the ending at the beginning, I'm going to get there in a really unnatural way, and I'm going to make these characters going to make decisions that they wouldn't make in real life, and to me, it has to feel authentic. So I like to have a premise and characters that I believe in, and like a theme, and then I set them off, and I just write it. And whoever it was who wrote this thing was like, said, you're either a planning writer or a pants writer, like i.e. a seat of the pants writer.
Right.
So, and that's definitely me. So like I say, I just kind of go, right, we're going to go here, and this is going to happen. I'm going to talk to these people, and then I do that, and then all right. So what naturally springs out of this conversation?
Right.
Where would I want us to go in a film, for example, or in a book? And then I go there. The problem with that though is, you don't know where it's going yet.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So you have that problem of like, maybe it gets too unfocused, and you're not heading anywhere. So you have to kind of come up with solutions.
Yeah. Yeah, and you already mentioned David Lynch, and he's like a very, very, very famous director, and he's like very creative, and he has like lots of things going on for him. But he's also like, when I sometimes look at his stuff, I'm sometimes thinking, well, does he just make it up as he goes? And in the sense of like, he can just do anything. Like, you know, he can just film a hole with like I don't know, like a chipmunk coming out of it, and everybody's like, wow, this is like a true satire on like our own grave digging, and you know, like what I mean. And has there ever been like, I know you love to like listen to people about theories and stuff on your work. Has there ever been like a situation where you listen to a person giving like a huge interpretation, and you're just like, yeah, right, that's exactly what I wanted to tell you, right? Yeah, that sounds very smart. And in fact, you were just like, oh my god, I'm just like making it up as I go, and I'm trying to fumble my way around, but the people are like interpreting it as like this like genius plan you had from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, this is where if Bandai listen to this, they'll be like that. No, say the right thing here, Merv. No, it's I would say it's a little bit of both.
Right.
Because you need a plan, and you need a basic structure, you know, and things that you're gonna. This is the basic story.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
But while you're doing that, you naturally hit upon stuff, and that's what's been good for me, is that I have to be a bit more structured, and I have to be heading towards something.
Right.
And so there's places that these stories have gone which weren't written by me, for example, in the first month of when we ever worked on Little Nightmares. They come as a natural evolution of like, all right, well, we did this thing in the DLC, for example, or we did this thing here, and we really like this artwork. All right, that's actually really cool. Let's work this into what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think when people, you know, you get the people now and again kind of going, I don't think you've got a big plan. I think you're just making this up. It's like that.
Yeah.
Of course we make some of it up as we go along. That's how it works. That's how any art works. You don't go, right, here's my plan for this painting, and I will now execute this plan. You go with your feeling.
Yeah, right.
You've got it, like, this feels like the right path for this to go.
Yeah.
And the fact that does feel like the right path means it belongs there.
Totally.
You know what I mean? It's like, otherwise it would be very, very just fake. And this is basically, we've surveyed our perceived audience, and these were their responses. Yeah. And this is how we turn these responses into an award-winning game.
Right.
It's like, no, I don't want to be part of any of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I say, it's a bit of both, but it's not like it's not like we're just like vomiting into a game and then and go, haha, it's interpretive. Go on, find out what this means.
Right.
We do know what we mean, but some of it's just we mean this because it feels like it belongs there.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably where I love reading David Lynch, because it at least kind of makes you feel like that's okay, because he does that a lot.
Right.
He talks about grabbing things out of dreams and out of the air, like just
feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
But I think there's something in that, because that feeling still comes from somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
The subconscious exists for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's the interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think he just mentioned, like, I think in one of his, like, advice videos, he said, like, I think you have to write down, like, 12 ideas and then you have, like, a movie. It's just, like, 12 ideas chained together, and or like 12 scenes or something. And it's like, I'm just like, I don't think this is how movies usually work, but I guess it works for him since he's like a genius or something, I'm just like, well, when I write down 12 ideas or 12 scenes, it's more like, I don't know, like a duck goes into a car and then a cake comes over the top on an airplane. I'm just like, wait, what is happening?
Yeah, but that's it though. But like, if David Lynch put that out, people would go, excellent.
Right.
Excellent.
He's like, oh, it's so smart.
Yeah. He's just an auteur, isn't he?
Right.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And for example, when you already mentioned it, going back to something I did a year ago, the interview, for example, and without wanting to sound too pretentious, I'm sometimes listening to it like, oh yeah, this I didn't phrase it right, but the question was quite good. I'm quite like I'm surprised at how well the question the question I came up with was. So was there something sometimes like a situation for you where you go back to a game or something you wrote back, like a note or something, and it's like, wow, this is really smart. Like this Dave really figured it out a year ago. Wait, how did I forget all this? But I'm glad that I somehow was smart back then. Something did it ever happen to you?
A long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when I was at school and early college, I thought I was probably in my prime in terms of ideas and seeing things that other people hadn't seen in texts or poems or whatever.
Yeah.
It happens less frequently now. So that's not good. But yeah, no, I think like the work I've done, I think the best work I've done at Tarsier has been Statik. I don't think not that many other people agree if you look at the sales figures. But I think it was quite gratifying. Recently, we had this amazing fan from New Zealand that figured out the final thing that no one had found. And we'd even tried running like a prize competition. If you find these 2 secrets in the game, you win like the only living copy of the soundtrack to Statik on tape, like cassette. And like 3 years after we ran that competition, she got in touch and she'd made a YouTube video.
Wow.
Awesome. She'd found it, and I was like that. Yes! One person in the world has discovered my genius.
Yeah.
But we just buried it. We just completely buried this secret, and she found it, and it was that was nice, because I was like, I'm proud of some stuff I did on that. So.
I mean, that's also great about the internet. I think it's a little bit strange, but also great, because it only takes one person and one video to go viral, and now suddenly, like, and I don't know for the click numbers on this video, but only one person needs to figure it out, and then they can just like let it know, like send it out into the wild, and people know it, and hundreds of thousands of people are like, oh, now we right, yeah, I've seen this. So it's quite interesting, this concept of like it takes only one person.
I'm still trying to make her video go viral, but it's just not happening. Just like accidentally, it's like that video. Has anyone seen it? Oh no, okay. It's just talking about genius, some genius thing that I wrote, but don't worry about it. It's fine. Back to my cave.
And I mean, maybe moving on to something a little bit more different. We already talked about some horror movies, and some of the horror movies are synonymous and infamous for their horrible naming convention. For like, they have like terrible like subtitles, like lines, like I don't know, The Exorcist II, Time for Real Exorcism or something.
The Heretic.
Yeah, right, exactly. So since you're the first guest that ever came back onto the show, so what would your episode be called? Like, what would be like I don't know, like let's get funky or something, like it could be the
you just ruined my idea.
I'm sorry.
No, we always joke about this at work, me and a guy called Dennis, like about like the worst, post-colon subtitle for a game could be, and it's always the something like, the reckoning or the quickening.
Right.
I think they're both Highlander.
Yeah.
The quickening one. So it would be one of them, I think. Like Dave Mervik 2, the unloosening. There you go.
Yeah.
And that's just like the first word. The Mervening.
The Mervening. Awesome. Yeah.
There you go. I'm going to keep saying these now. So how long have we got left?
I'm not quite sure. A couple of, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? I'm not quite sure. Something like that.
Dave Mervik 2. Divination. Davination, there you go.
Oh my God!
Got there eventually.
Wow, I have to give you some royalties once this podcast goes viral.
It reminds me, we did a fun thing recently, because we couldn't have a release party for Little Nightmares 2. Right. So we did this thing online where, like, different teams would present, talk about what they'd done and some funny stories and all this. Mm-hmm. We had this idea of taking what we did with Statik Live, where I played Dr. Ringen live on YouTube, talk to people. We resurrected him again, but put him in Little Nightmares scenes, and the interview guests were characters from Little Nightmares. Well, so it was just like a therapist's office basically, and he's talking to these scared little kids in these most terrifying scenes, and it was so much fun. But like one of the people we interviewed was our brand and communications manager, Megan, and I was just feigning ignorance over what she does, which wasn't hard because I'm crap at it. So I was like, so what do you do then? And I likened her to a megaphone, and then I almost broke character when I was like, or a Megan phone, and now she's called Megan phone. So I had to quickly check that. I hope you don't mind that. No, I loved it. But yeah. So that was like my most recent moment of genius. I created the Megan phone.
Awesome, yeah. I mean, that's quite the achievement,
I know. I'm an artist. What can I say?
Right, yeah.
I weave with words.
Right, yeah. I think this is also where you peaked, and then you 10 years from now you go back and I guess I really peaked with the Megan phone. Like, this was really smart back then.
It never got better than the phone. That's how depressing my life became.
Right. Yeah. And I think I saw that you mentioned on a different podcast that you said you once noticed during development that you played a section of the game, like a demo or something, and then you sort of felt that it wasn't good enough. And it was something you did, like it was something your work wasn't good enough. So, but how do you really determine when something isn't good enough and is not maybe like, it's not using the word fault like loosely, but I mean, for example, like, well, maybe the audio wasn't really up to snuff. So for example, like maybe we could have added some more violence here or something, or like a jump scare noise over here, and it would work better. Like, how do you really determine that's like, oh yeah, that's on me, right? I guess like everybody's killing it and I'm just Dave Mervik. And how do you know when something is good enough, where maybe somebody else comes to you and say, well, I think, can we maybe tweak this here? And you're just like, no, I think this is it. This is how it should be.
I think I had time and mandate on Statik when I last wrote a script. Mm-hmm. So I had less issues there. I think I could have done better, but it wasn't that same kind of knot in your stomach.
Right.
But like on Little Big Planet Vita, that was like my first job here.
Right.
And it was such a crazy project that was just, trying to do right by what Media Molecule did, and there's so many different like studios involved in different areas and stuff. And so the story was just constantly being reiterated, and I had to adjust the cutscenes and all this. And we just got to a point where I had to keep taking stuff out to cut time, and like I had overwritten that so much, like in the cutscenes. Like the last cutscene in LBP Vita is ridiculously long. How people accepted that, and you still get people saying they enjoyed it, but like I would have turned that off very quickly, because I'm the worst for being impatient with people's cutscenes. But with that, it was just like we need to be done, and it needs to make sense now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's definitely one where I look at it and go, what was I thinking? Why was I so obsessed with, because this was a nice phrase and I was so desperate to show that I could do it, that I was good enough to be the writer for this company and for this game, that I just overdid it and put too much in that we couldn't get rid of then because, things kind of hinged on it. So all you do, it's your own, the own sick feeling in your stomach, I think, when you get that, when you play through and play through and play through like we always do.
Right.
And you feel in the room and people, you just know, like, oh, this is too much, isn't it? People are shifting around in their seats or whatever, or they don't understand it or whatever.
Right.
So it's just that, and I think, but the more and more you do this, the more and more alive you've got to be to it. Like, you just got to play it and play it and play it. Watch other people play it and see how it feels. Does it feel awkward, or are you getting the right reactions from people? I mean, I guess everyone's different in that way.
Right.
But because we're not like this fully automated studio where, like, yes, we have these points and these narrative devices we're going to use, and this is how cutscenes work here. It's all like, all right, how does this feel? Does this feel good? All right.
Right.
In that case, then I need to write it in this way, or I need to perform it in that way. So we just always go by feel, and there are enough other people who I really respect on that front who will go, I don't think that works, man. I think it feels a bit confusing, or a bit too obvious. Whatever the problem is, and we've known each other long enough to be able to be honest and not kind of be offended.
Right. Yeah.
Generally, sometimes I get offended because they're just wrong and my writing is perfect.
Right. Yeah. That's a great answer. Yeah. And yeah, I guess for the last segment, I wanted to first of all congratulate you on the launch of Little Nightmares 2. It was a really awesome game. Yeah, it was terrific, and I think you really amped up everything. Like, it was the scariness was amped up, the art direction, everything was really nice, to be honest. And I found it was really interesting that based on our last conversation about that Little Nightmares was entirely, there's no other messages. It was entirely about veganism. You kept that theme from the hunter. He was like tearing up the meat from the animals, and so you sort of like used the conversation we had last time to sort of create a bridge that, like the last game was about veganism, and so we had this bridge in the beginning. So I really appreciated that you took my comments to heart.
I mean, we had our podcast on repeat play.
That's awesome.
Throughout the entire project, just so everyone could remember
that's
where all this is coming from. And if you notice as well that, like, once all of that flesh has been removed, it's replaced with stuffing and nothingness.
Exactly.
Which I think really compounds the whole point that we're trying to make.
Exactly. Yes. There was also a lot of water. Like very healthy.
Exactly. Right. And everyone else in that house was dead.
Yes. Totally. Yeah. And I also saw that you hid the earlobes, like the character of Mono not having any earlobes. You hid it under the paper bag, which again makes total sense.
Which is how I go outdoors these days.
Right, yeah. Mask on, yeah. And yeah, I'm not quite so happy about let's just say how I wrote it down. The fucked up snake woman. That was uncalled for. That was too much.
No, no one else sees Medusa and her. Like, she didn't even come from that.
Really?
Like in influences wise, but I just I think I was just scarred by Medusa and Clash of the Titans. The old 80s Ray Harryhausen era one.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
It's just something about those two faces. I guess it's the stop motionness of it all, and these really kind of really sharp features. Those eyes just destroy me of the teacher.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's what people said when they saw Medusa.
Yeah, right.
For the first and last time.
Yeah. And maybe this is a little bit. I'm not quite sure if you can answer this, but Little Nightmares 1 was once called Hunger. Let's maybe reverse this. If you had to give like any name you want, and I'm not going to follow up with any question. If you had to call Little Nightmares 2 anything else besides Little Nightmares 2, like maybe like a colon, the return, or like the watering, like is there what would you call it?
What do you mean? Would it be like Hunger something or something completely else?
No, I mean like Little Nightmares was once called Hunger, and like now
Yeah.
Little Nightmares is called Little Nightmares 2. So maybe you can maybe use like, okay, if we had to now rename it for some reason, like there's like
Oh, you should have given me warning of this question. This is a fantastic question, and I'm going to ruin it with a terrible answer.
that's fine. I'm not gonna follow up on it, so I'm just gonna leave
Okay.
it in the room.
Terrorvision, the Statikening. No, that was really terrible. I think that was more terrible than even I imagined it could be.
I mean, you can come back to it at the end of the episode, and yeah, I think also it's interesting. So you're now moving on to different projects. Yeah, what does it feel like when you're sort of like moving on? Like, do you like, because some creators are think like, well, this is now only mine, nobody else can touch it. But I'm quite sure that there are many passionate fans or other projects, or other people working in game development that would love to take over this franchise and work on it. So what is your stance? You always think like, well, I always love to see different takes on it. Like, I think my work should be interpreted as many times as possible, and there should be something else coming out of it. Or are you more like, yeah, I wish, I don't know, I wish now people would come up with something else, you know, like there would be nobody else touching the IP or something else.
No, I mean, first of all, it's Bandai's IP, so you know it doesn't really matter what we think.
Yeah, totally.
But, I think I think it's good if things are going to continue, then I think it's really healthy that maybe they get revived, you know, or you know, that other people see what they can do with it.
Right.
It's hard because you know we actually created this ourselves. It came from nowhere, but just our discussions. So it's like, of course, it'd be hard to kind of see that go elsewhere, but it's not like you resent it because, you know, that came from our need to create new stuff. Otherwise, we would have just like begged Sony and MM to let us just keep making Little Big Planet.
Right.
Or, you know what I mean? That's not what we're not about. Just making money and staying afloat. We're all in Tarsier together because we want to make new things, create new worlds, and explore weird stuff.
Right.
So that's what's exciting for the future now, is that we're doing that again. And that's when Statik and Little Nightmares came out the same week, didn't they? You know, but we had two halves. Well, 1/5 of the studio and 4/5 of the studio working on two brand new things that really got us excited in totally different ways, and that's really fun. That's you know, it kind of revitalizes everyone and reminds you what you're doing and why.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't change that for the world, to be honest. So it's up to Bandai where they go next with that. So you know, I'm interested to see.
That's awesome. Yeah. And yeah, moving on to the last two questions, and you can talk about anything you worked on before, and you don't need to mention it even. But I wanted to know, like, usually people say, like, for example, Little Nightmares, people say, like, well, you know, there was clearly an influence by Limbo or something. You know, like, there's a clear influence by something. Or clearly, of course. I mean, I was part of the development team, sitting here working on this YouTube video, I guess. And so, like, but what was, like, the weirdest piece of media that sort of made it into the game, that influenced the game? And you don't need to specify which one it was, but for example, I don't know, for example, like on Statik, like I can't believe nobody will ever know that SpongeBob SquarePants influenced a part of it or something, you know, like something really weird and quirky.
Oh, that's a toughie as well. Do you know what? I'll tell you what it is. It's an audio book by Peter Cook and Chris Morris called Why Bother.
Okay.
It's a fantastic. It's like, I think it's 5 10-minute improvised interviews where Chris Morris. I don't know if you know about Chris Morris or Peter Cook. Chris Morris is phenomenal satirist, British guy. He created a thing called Brass Eye and later a thing called Jam, which is very David Lynch inspired. But he sat down with Peter Cook, who is a comedy genius, particularly here, and he interviewed him in character as this character called Arthur Street Greebling. And basically, the voice for Dr. Ingen is my drunk, hoarse from singing and smoking, and tired version of Arthur Street Grievling in Why Bother. So that's Dr. Ingen.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
and my wife recorded that. I improvised that night when I'd come back from playing in the cellar with a few people from Tarsier.
Mm-hmm.
I could barely talk, but she said, "Oh, you should try your Dr. Ingen voice now." So I'm like, okay, then I'm talking a bit like this. And then I played it to Björn just for a joke the day after. He's like, oh man, there you go. And that was it. So we just kind of kept trying to recreate that. Because I had my face on a pillow as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit squashed like that, and that sounded weird. But So that's the weirdest bit of media influence on that game.
That's great, yeah.
I don't think anyone has ever spotted it. Probably because it's a really bad approximation of a piece of book.
I mean, now people will know it.
I mean, that has me in stitches. That I could really recommend that.
That's awesome.
Why bother?
I'm going to put it in the show notes.
I think it's on YouTube.
Okay.
It's just brilliant.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And yeah, coming back to the question I asked before, do you want to add or change anything for the name for Little Nightmares 2? Is there anything coming up?
Yeah, but it's not enough time.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's fine. Maybe for the third episode we're going to have, if I ever bother to reply, of course.
Televicious.
That's good enough for me.
The fallening.
Perfect. And yeah, Dave, I had such a wonderful time. Thank you for coming back to the show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure.
That was another great episode.
I'm going to go and join the back of the queue again. So I'll see you again in a year or two.
Maybe let's make it 5,
I'm not made of time.
Yeah, right. And we're back full circle with Momo. I don't have enough time for guests like you.
See what I mean? I just bring it all back
right,
together.
Perfect. What a nice loop. What a perfect loop.
Yeah. Like Little Nightmares 2.
Right. Oh yeah, I have to say that I'm quite depressed because I had this great theory in my head and talking to a friend because I was playing with a friend of mine and we were talking about the theory and he was like, yeah, I think maybe it's this or maybe this, and I'm not going to spoil it in case somebody still hasn't played it, but I'm just like, no way, that's not this. I prefer it much way this. And then on doing research, he said like, well, I guess I have to say it's this. I'm just like, I feel so stupid now.
there was too many people getting annoyed. I was going, well, if that's this, then it can't. This doesn't. I'm like, I have to answer this question.
Right. But that's fine, That's fine for ruining all my dreams and my enjoyment of the media.
I know, but I aim to please.
Yeah. And yeah, is there anything you want to plug? Anything? Where can people reach you or something? Anything you want to plug? Maybe Little Nightmares 2, something else.
You can reach me nowhere. Please reach me nowhere. I actually had to quit Facebook recently because I got reached by someone who was telling me I was going to hell for making Little Nightmares 2. So I was like that. And delete Facebook. So reach me nowhere, folks.
That's great. And by the way, yeah, in case you want to follow along, we're also now on Facebook.
And we're condemning people to hell on a regular basis.
No, but it is quite true. You can find us at Yumi Industry on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can follow me at Dorian Chow on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, that's very nice. But before we finally close off the show, last time I desperately tried Dave to draw something for me, and he refused, which is totally fair. Like there's no shaming here in drawing skills. But this time, I realized that due to COVID, many artists are now doing these like virtual signing sessions, and I'm now doing like a quick drawing of what I believe Mono looks like. I've looked up something, and I'm going to close it now again. So I only remember like sort of like the brief, like there's a brief moment I had with him. I'm going to remember, and what we're going to do, first time ever, we're going to collaborate. And I'm going to finish the drawing, and I'm also going to sign it by you. So you're going to tell me what your signature looks like, just by voice. Like, is it like a big D? Is it like a Mervik, or just like something?
It's a big D with a sad face at the end. I sometimes, if I'm feeling jaunty, I'll put 2 eyes in the D.
Okay.
And then
I'm gonna do that. No worries.
And then it begins with an M, but then it just kind of goes.
Okay. So it's a big D with a face on it, and then there's like a mer. Okay. So wait, I'm gonna do it. So there's a big D. That's always great to end the episodes with big Ds. And is it like a smiley face, or is it like a sad face?
No, like the way I finish off the D in a curl, it always ends up in a sad face, which wasn't my intention.
Okay. I think I already ruined it, but that's fine, And I'm just going to now use a mer.
Yeah, have you seen Man with Two Brains where he says Dr. Have her?
Oh yeah, that's perfect. And yeah, I'm going to send you the picture, and I'm going to upload the picture as well. The first ever virtual signing by Dave Mervik. You heard it here first, guys and gals. And maybe this piece of art is going to end up at the MoMA. Get it? Mono. I guess it's time to end the episode. I clearly lost all self-esteem.
You should just clip that bit out in the edit.
I won't, because
insert something better.
No, I won't. It is. Some people will, in years later, will come to me and say, "Well, this was really genius. You've planned it all along." And that's right, folks.
Sometimes people do that.
Yeah, sometimes. And sometimes maybe people is going to send me to a psychiatric ward. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Take care, everyone. Bye.